Hey guys, this is Rudy coming at you live from Palm Beach in Florida. It is Monday. It is November the 11th. And as you can see by the paraphernalia surrounding me in my new studio, it's been a busy week in US politics, as most of you would know if you've been following the news, because big week last week. We saw this badass dude, Donald Trump, this guy, win election for the second time. It's only the second time, by the way, in US history that a president has won a second term of office that was not consecutive. The previous guy was Grover Cleveland, who served two non-consecutive terms. So when Trump takes office in January of 2025, he would actually only be the second president in US history to serve a second non-consecutive term. Last time I checked, he had approximately 312 electoral college votes compared to Kamala Harris, who has 226. He needs 270 to win. Usually people complain and say, yeah, you might have won the electoral college, but you didn't win the popular vote. Well, he won it by more than 5 million or thereabouts anyway. So I don't think anybody can complain about Trump's resounding victory in the past election. More importantly for us, though, is what does this mean for energy? So if we look back at energy, and here I'm only looking at it year to date, you can see that the futures contract closed on Friday at about $70. Over the past year has been up and down, mostly down, been very bearish of late, obviously, as most of you would know. And on November the 7th, so last week, we ended the week at $72.36. And then shortly after that, opened up at $70.43. So despite the fact that the stock market spiked phenomenally after Trump was elected, what was it? The Dow was up almost 1,500 points or something like that. Energy took a, spiked a little and then sort of drew back again, and quite quickly too. How about Energy Select? So if we look at the XLE, so this is one of my ETFs that I talk about quite a lot, right? In April, it hit a high of almost $100. It's currently trading at around $93, $94 or thereabouts. So it's not doing too badly. In fact, year to date, it's up about 10%. And if you take into consideration that it also pays a dividend of over 3%, you've got a gain here of about 14% or so year to date, which ain't half bad. I mean, obviously, this is not like Nvidia or something like that, but it's not too bad. It's probably reasonable in the greater scheme of things. If you can generate a return of around 14, 15% every year, you're going to double your investments every 5 years. That's just math, not related to energy. Anyway, some of the stocks have been flying, right? So the top seven in the S&P 500, these include companies like Google and Amazon and Apple and Nvidia, of course, Tesla, the sort of super seven. If you scoop them out of the S&P 500, then the S&P 493 has been less good than the S&P 500 overall, because those seven stocks have literally just been keeping them afloat. Back to Trump, right? So in the past and most recently, he said, drill, baby, drill, right? What does that mean? So purely from an energy bull point of view, if the president of the country says drill, baby, drill, what he's basically saying is let's increase supply. If you increase supply, unless there's commensurate demand, the price will go down, not up, right? So we got to be cautious here. And in fact, if we look back to the time when President Trump was in office, 2016 to 2020, energy was actually one of the worst performing sectors during that time. So if you're an energy bull like me, then maybe the bullish shine is rubbing off just a little bit, and you need to look at the broader market for where your gains are going to come from, as opposed to just focusing narrowly on energy. Trump has said, quote, we have more liquid gold than any other country in the world. The US is the top producer. It's also the top consumer, around 20 million, 21 million barrels per day. So unless that demand spikes significantly, and if the energy companies actually agree to draw more, which is unlikely, by the way, why should they? We should have more supply than demand, and that would be more negative pressure on an already depressed price. While the incoming administration may be favorable towards liquid gold, the potential for production growth will be dictated by the price. Oil producers, quote, need $64 per barrel, this is US dollars per barrel, to profitably drill a new well, says the Dallas Fed Energy Survey. Well, the Dallas Fed Energy Survey is a reasonably reliable resource because they happen to be in Dallas, which is in Texas, which is where the Permian is, which is where most of the US oil is coming from, which is produced locally. We may see the US total output growth from federal lands with a reversal of Biden's policies. Now, this is an interesting one because it's a little bit of a dichotomy, right? So current Fed land onshore oil is producing about 12% and offshore, if you include that, is about 26 in total, not in addition, right? So 12 plus another 14 is about 26. And then the issuance of leases on federal land had little impact on oil production because oil production on federal lands were actually growing every year that Biden was in office, despite the fact that he said coming into office that he would end fracking and stop drilling. That didn't happen, but people say all kinds of things to get elected and then typically don't do much. Trump's an exception, though. When he says he's going to do something, generally he does it, good or bad. He's a straight shooter, right? Oil and gas leases issuance on federal lands grew under Trump, but dropped under Biden. But if we go back here, look at the spike. So if we look at fiscal year 2011, and then Obama came into office, it was high. It spiked again under Trump, almost to the same level as it was in 2012 under Obama, and then declined under Biden. But the price of energy actually went up. And I guess, once again, as I said, a bit of a two-edged sword. Draw, baby, draw continued. Any upside in oil production would likely also provide upside to natural gas output. That's not necessarily a bad thing, except that right now it's even the spot price on natural gas is even below the production price. So there's a little bit of a dislocation in terms of price in addition to supply and demand. Trump may also provide more certainty to the industry and provide comfort to them to invest in pipeline infrastructure. I like this one because, as you would know by now, pipelines are critical to my energy portfolio because my largest positions include companies like Energy Transfer and Enbridge. And those two guys are the largest or some of the largest pipeline owners in North America, excluding Mexico. So most of Canada is Enbridge and most of the United States is Energy Transfer. If they do that, it will alleviate a persistent bottleneck in the Permian region. We will probably see a lifting of Biden's pause, which was stupid, on LNG export project approvals, right? So why would you cut off the cheap oil and gas from Russia to the European Union, and then at the same time put a pause on LNG exports from the United States? It just didn't make any sense whatsoever. It was a political move. While this does not change the short to medium term outlook for the global LNG market, it will help to remove some of the longer term uncertainty around LNG supply. Trump is likely to focus on domestic issues initially. Now, if we think about this one carefully, the whole concept of MAGA as a movement, despite the fact that many people are trying to demonize it and weaponize it and do all kinds of things saying MAGA is Nazi and ugly and all that kind of stuff, MAGA simply, by definition, means make America great again, which is arguably not a bad dream or vision or, hope, or it's optimistic, right? Make America great again. Now, I know some of the naysayers will say America was never great to begin with, or otherwise people will say like, yeah, good luck with that. That's not going to happen. But, Trump is a straight shooter and he actually wants to make America great again. That's his whole philosophy, right? So whether he succeeds or not is a separate issue. Obviously, I hope he succeeds because I live in the United States. I want a successful president and I want a successful country. But, he's likely to focus on domestic issues, make America great again, not make the whole world great again. But his attention will have to shift or turn to trade eventually, global trade. I mean, you can't ignore it, right? So whatever will happen will happen. And it's more likely to happen in late 2025, early 2026, because the initial focus once he takes office in February, in January the 20th, 2025, will be American, healthcare with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., infrastructure, oil, drill, baby, drill, all that kind of stuff, right? It's very, very US focused until he has to start paying attention to global issues. During the 2018 US-China trade war, remember that one? Trump against China, trade war. I'm going to impose tariffs on everybody. Chinese buyers were reluctant to purchase US crude due to the risk and the eventual implementation of tariffs. This saw the WTI Brent discount widen from around $3 to about $11 per barrel in 2018. A ratcheting up of these trade tariffs could see the WTI Brent spread coming under pressure once again. Not too sure. We'll have to see about that one. If you look at the US crude oil exports ending up in China, you'll see there was a huge spike. But look at the timeline here, right? So we're looking at January was very, very little, and it spiked as China's economy was growing, and then bang, COVID, right? The pandemic. starting out early 2020. Arguably, it started in late 2019, but very few people knew about it. And the local people from the FDA and CDC and that either didn't know or otherwise elected not to tell us that there was some kind of a threat. But anyway, the pandemic happened and the US crude exports declined, went up and down a bit, but it declined quite significantly until it spiked again in 2023. Now, during this period of decline over here, we also obviously saw the start of the Ukraine-Russia war. And during this time, US crude oil exports might have started, despite the spike over here, decreasing in terms of going to China. But China is buying cheap oil and gas, like India and the countries around it, from Russia, despite US sanctions, because it doesn't really apply to them, so they don't really care, right? Trade uncertainty continued. In 2018, close to 25% of US crude exports went to China. A quarter, almost a quarter of US crude exports went to China, while the share has fallen to around 7% currently. The delta there, so the 18% that's missing, made up primarily by buying inexpensive crude from Russia. China buying inexpensive crude from Russia. The other country buying a lot of crude from Russia is India. They've just opened up a new shipping pipeline through one of the stans and Iran into India. For natural gas, risk arises from LNG exports. In 2018, China imposed retaliatory tariffs of 10% on US LNG imports, increased to 25% in 2019. This saw US LNG exports to China fall to zero. But it started to recover a little bit when China issued tariff waivers as part of a trade deal. Since 2018, there have been large shifts in the global gas market, with a tight LNG market in Europe a significantly more important buyer of US LNG. Foreign policy. Well, Trump's ability to manage or handle the Russia-Ukraine war and Middle East conflicts are very important. Now, he has said, in fact, once he even said he will end the Russia-Ukraine war on day one. He might even be working to try and end it before he even takes office. He is very, very focused on actually ending the war, which is quite refreshing if you really think about it, because most of the politicians, including the politicians directly linked to Ukraine, like Zelensky and friends, are basically permanently just asking for more weapons and more money to continue the war, whereas Trump is basically saying, let's end the war. So he's actually quite an outlier in that regard, because you don't hear too many leading politicians from the European Union or African leaders or Asian leaders saying, stop this war, stop the nonsense. Let's get back to brokering some peace in the region. Mr. Trump said he will bring an end to the Russia-Ukraine war and broker a peace deal that will remove a large amount of geopolitically energy market risk. We'll have to see if he can be successful in doing that. I hope so, because I prefer peace to warmongering. We don't know if a peace deal would include the removal of sanctions against Russia. This one hits close to home for me personally, because I still hold some Lukoil shares in my portfolio. However, nowadays in my Schwab account, they've placed it in escrow, and in that escrow account, it doesn't even mention Lukoil. It just says number missing, so you can't even see the CUSIP, right? So you can't even look it up. Effectively, my value of my Lukoil holdings is zero. It will be in the US's best interest if Europe continues to shun Russian energy. So this is also a bit of a twofold thing, right? It will be in the in the United States' best interest if Europe continues to shun Russian energy, because then they'll buy more from the United States, given that oil from US has been one of the key beneficiaries of this move. Now, of course, on the other hand, if you end the Russia-Ukraine war and start working towards peace, then maybe they can start buying some Russian crude or oil and gas again, and uh, sanctions might be removed. Who knows, right? I don't know. I don't know too much. In the Middle East, geopolitical factors are hanging over the energy markets, many, many different things, right? So there's conflict in Israel, Gaza, Iran firing missiles at Israel firing missiles and doing all kinds of things. It's like, I don't have a dog in the fight, but there's a lot of awful things happening in the Middle East. Trump is supportive of Israel. Once again, like I said, I'm not taking a position or stand on this one. It's not in my interest to do so. And he said that he would look to bring peace to the region. Well, that would be good. It's possible that he aims to achieve this regional peace by taking an aggressive stance against Iran, right? So now If you're going to broker a peace deal, but you take an aggressive stance against Iran, you're kind of going back to begin to where you were before, which will also put pressure on Iran's proxies. Conflict de-escalation would take a large risk premium out of the oil and gas market, right? So when you think about this, Trump reimposed sanctions against Iran in 2018. That was after Obama had lifted them, which caused a significant fall in Iranian oil exports. Biden, on the other hand, did not lift the sanctions, but they were not strictly enforced, which means he kind of lifted the sanctions again, even though he didn't necessarily say so. In the absence of US direction and policy, Iran increased exports significantly during Biden's term. The upside here is that Trump repeats the playbook above, because what it does is it takes about 1 million barrels per day out of the market supply. And then he would likely try to counter strength in oil prices by pressuring OPEC Plus to increase output. Now, that one we've seen before, because if he tries to do that again, they'll probably just say no, which is what they did before. Why would they want to increase output? If they increase output, they are basically increasing supply, which puts pressure on the price, and their economies are entirely energy linked. So they wouldn't do that. How about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? He is vowing to refill the SPR and said that the Biden administration's drawdown to low gas prices has hurt the US energy securities. So the comment that he's making here is basically saying that Biden drew down the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, in order to lower gas prices for US consumers at the pump, in order to help him be more popular than he was. Not that it necessarily helped, but that's what he did. The SPR now stands at about 375 million barrels, which is its lowest level since the 80s, but it can hold approximately 714 million barrels, meaning that Trump's promise to immediately refill the reserve would involve purchasing on the market around 300 million barrels of oil. Now, if you put that into perspective, a company like Occidental Petroleum, which produces approximately 1 million and some, right, 1.2, 1.3, whatever, million barrels per day, this is almost one entire year worth of Occidental Petroleum's supply being required in terms of an increase in demand to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. How does Trump feel about renewable energy? Well, not too different from myself for the greater part. Wherever your allegiances lie in this regard, you're more than welcome to tell us in the comments, and maybe you can educate us if he's wrong. But basically, he says renewable energy is unreliable and costly. We know this to be true. That's just stating fact. Wind and solar, he says, yeah, he would promise to halt offshore wind development. Those things are just ugly, man, and it destroys the environment. But in addition to that, they require so much metal, concrete, plastics, etc., to manufacture. They actually keep the oil industry going, and then they require 80 barrels of oil just to, or diesel, just to keep the turbines turning. Right? It's too expensive for far too little output. On EVs, he opposes Biden's subsidies and vehicle efficiency rules. That one you can debate if you want, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to encourage or force people to adopt a different behavior, you can do so through government subsidies. But at the end of the day, what you're doing by issuing government subsidies and grants in order to change behavior is you're hurting another industry, in this case, the traditional American auto workers and traditional car market, which employs a few 100,000 people directly and indirectly. How about energy efficiency standards? Those are those little stickers you get on your refrigerator that tells you that this machine is energy efficient. He promises to abolish and eliminate energy efficiency standards for appliances because they result in inferior product choices for consumers. I don't know about that one. I don't know too much about refrigeration at all, as an example, but it also applies to washing machines and dryers and so on. You can tell me if you know more than me. Nuclear power. Trump supports keeping existing nuclear reactors operating and continuing with the development of small modular reactors. I like small modular reactors, and I like nuclear as the most efficient, safest, cleanest, and least expensive way with the least carbon footprint of generating energy or power. Nuclear is literally the exact opposite of wind and solar, right? You don't have to destroy the environment to put a small nuclear reactor in place, and that small nuclear reactor can power thousands of homes, much like a whole farm full of solar panels, right? So that's sort of a little bit of a quick snapshot of Trump and energy. I'd like to know what you guys think, and maybe you can share with me in the comments what you think. Uh, when you have a situation where it was very, very easy to be bullish on energy 2019 through to 2023 for sure. Um, it doesn't mean that you should always keep all your eggs in one basket. And it certainly requires you to do a little bit of diversification and a deeper dive into some other markets to see where your gains are going to come from next. Energy for sure is under pressure. It's under negative pressure and it's struggling right now. If Trump follows through on most of his promises, um, he will certainly help to make the United States wholesale energy independent, which is one of his goals, but at the same time cause some downward pressure on the price, which would also cause some more downward pressure on the stock price. Anyway, that's what Trump thinks. I'm just reporting, but you can tell me what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.